So, hi everyone. Welcome to the 10th ACM Sikai chapter meet. I'm Deepak, one of the co-organizer of today's meet along with Rupam, Nishita and Raghavi. So it's our 10th chapter meet and I thank you all for joining. Before we start the talks, I'll give a brief introduction about us. We are ACM Sikai Mumbai professional chapter and IIT Bombay ACM Sikai student chapter consisting of students, academicians, and influence and insightful panel discussions as well. For today's meet, we have two presentations, one by Raghav Lakshman from IDC and the other one is by Tanya Balal from Shrishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology. We are also going to have an interesting discussion with Samir Bhiwani, who is the Vice President of Design and Customer at Script. Before we and answers, chat window for the questions. So while listening to the presentations, you can post your questions in the chat window. Nishita and Raghavi will cluster and moderate the questions and ask to the speaker. Okay, now I request Rupam to invite Samir and host the conversation. Over to you, Rupam.
So, hi everyone. Hope everyone is doing good. Everyone is being safe and taking all the precaution amid all this situations we have. So, to start with the introduction, today what we are here to discuss in this AMA format thing is design leadership as a career. To give you a short brief why we're discussing this topic is because there is a lot of emergence and need for mentorship from senior designers to a lot of emerging designers that are coming out in India. And we have found that sometimes there is many queries with respect to how to build a design team, how to mentor a design team, how to organize a design team. And there is a huge part a senior designer plays a role in that and in shaping of the entire product. Also, there is another set of query that people end up having is if I'm a designer, I'm working for 4 years, 5 years, and my next promotion cycle or etc. is coming up. What steps do I take? Do I become a design manager or do I go towards creative director role? What should I do and what action should I take in my career? So to have these kind of conversations on a deeper level today, we have in our country Samir Bhiwani. To give a short intro about Samir, he's Vice President of Designer and Customer Experience at Scriptbox. And before this also, Samir has worked at a lot of companies, which he will be mentioning in his presentation. But Samir, as a person, I would say he's a very helpful person. He continues to mentor not only people he works with, but also in the design community in India. And so I would not speak much. I would give the floor to him so he can start his intro and present more things about it. Over to you, Samir.
Thanks, Rupam, and thanks to all of you for inviting me to talk to you. I think in opportunity born out of this virtual format is that me being in Bangalore, I'm able to talk to you there. Otherwise, I think most of your events have all been local. So
yes,
also good. All right, so let me before I talk more about myself, I just wanted to share something, a very interesting quote that I came across in a book called Creativity Inc. So if you see this, it says if you give a good idea to a mediocre team, they will screw it up. If you give a mediocre idea to a brilliant team, they will either fix it or throw it away and come up with something better. So take a moment to think about the words and concepts in this quote. They are from the former president of Walt Disney and Pixar Animation Studios, Ed Catmull. And if you haven't read his book Creativity Inc., you should read it. Very, very useful and relevant for creators like us. So there are, if we look at the individual words here, right? Idea, team, mediocre, brilliant. There are so many nuances to building the right team, inspiring them and facilitating them to do great work. And as a design leader, one is expected to understand the needs not only of users of the business, but also of every designer in the team, and also a host of internal and external stakeholders. From that, you're expected to create a vision, assemble a team of talented designers, and enable them to achieve that vision. Right? Design leader, of course, is responsible for their own career growth, right? In addition to the career growth of each and every person in the team. We'll explore some of the nuances above via some lessons that I have learned. I'm hoping that I can offer you some insights, if depending on wherever you are in your career, or you haven't started yet, on how to think about it, what to expect from your design managers when you have fun, what to expect when you are at that point where you have a choice between whether you want to become a design manager or you want to continue on the individual contributor path. With that context, and to give you some idea of how I will, from what background I will answer these questions, I'll just take 5 minutes to talk you through what journey I have had, to the point where we are today. When I started off, these were the first two companies that I worked with. This was in the years 2000 to 2004. This was during the dot-com boom and bust era. Post that, it's interesting that again we are in a similar kind of point where businesses are quite affected. And we have to see how things go and when things recover, but definitely that was also a point where businesses were quite badly affected, and we didn't know what was going to happen, but there was a lot of learning. Design wise, I think back to these years as warming up, as I was understanding what was going on in the industry, what kind of businesses were there, how businesses worked, how teams worked, what do I look at as a designer, what is my own performance, what standards should I hold myself up to, what processes should I follow, how should I work with others, how do I convince somebody that my design it makes sense, what else do I do. And this is also a time when we had a slightly different setup in terms of what kind of roles we had as designers. UX wasn't even a phrase that was being used at the time. We were all web designers, and that's what we did. So moving on from here, the next couple of years I spent in these two companies you might have heard of, where I look at it as honing the craft, where I really learned a lot of new processes. Both of these companies had very large teams, very large scale operations, very complicated business domains that we worked with, and very complicated technologies that we worked with. And it was all really about going deep into design processes, into research processes, and being able to leverage all of the resources that these companies could offer. So for example, in Oracle, we had design usability labs all over the place, dedicated recruiters to find us users to talk to. Now, if you didn't make the best of it, then what was the point? So that was really with me and the teams that I worked with to make the best of those resources, and be able to provide learn and provide the level of solutions that these companies wanted. Then moved into these two companies, HP and BlueJeans, where these were the first times when I got leadership roles, management roles to have. In fact, in Oracle in 2009, I was offered this choice that should I start with a junior management kind of role, or do I want to continue as an individual contributor? I chose the latter because I felt that there's a lot more depth and mastery that I needed before I could help others doing the same. So I continued on the individual contributor path at that point of time. And but when it came to HP, I felt kind of ready to take that on and learn what that had to offer me. It was also an interesting time. We were experimenting with different organization structures. One of the organization structure that we had was we had a team which was half designers and half engineers. That was a team that I led as the first stint. Quite challenging, I must say. Um, but it taught me a lot of interesting lessons. In Blue Jeans, really, when I joined, there was barely a team. I set up the team in India, all the designers that were there, and it's a it's a video conferencing app, kind of a competitor to Zoom, and very technical domain, very network heavy, engineering heavy product. And really, if you think about it, we say Zoom is easy to use or Blue Jeans might be easy to use or whatever, but there are a lot more deciding factors whether the overall experience is great or not, right? If it gives you bad audio or bad video, or it spoils your presentation, the best of design really does not matter. So the solutions had to be such that went beyond just making it easy to use or making it look good. It was also about avoiding a lot of the problems that people fall into when they use these products. So that was that. But learning as a team, I learned a lot of lessons over there on how to manage people's careers, what they expect from a good manager, how do they expect to collaborate with others, other functions in the teams across the organization, across locations, and what eventually they looked at as their time in this team. Is it taking them further in their career, or are they stalling? And how do you take that forward? Finally, where we are currently, I'm at Scriptbox for the last 2 years. I'm heading the design team. Again, I've built the design team here from ground up. I look at this as a bunch of very capable designers that I have put together. For me, it is to understand what the organization wants, translate it to them in a way that they can be successful, and then get out of their way. Really let them do the best design work that they have done, for me to kind of support them and help them and facilitate all of that from happening, rather than trying to be the designer. I'm no longer that, right? So that's what it is. The main theme across all of these roles and all of these experiences over the last 20 years for me, it has been to understand the complexity that business has, the possibilities and constraints that technology offers, and either design simple solutions myself or design them through my team, right? And really, as I grew from in Blue Jeans especially, and then now at Scriptbox, into the leadership role, it's been about hiring the great people, giving them the right process to follow, and then really going beyond the design team. I mean, it is not just the design teams. The design team alone cannot get the best design products in the hands of customers, right? We all know that. It requires an entire organization. It requires your collaboration with the business folks. It requires collaboration with engineering and a whole bunch of other functions based on what kind of business you're in, to get your vision out there in the hands of customers, and for them to be successful using it. So really, it's about building the culture of the company, helping people understand how to work with designers, understanding what they expect from designers, and trying to bridge that gap, trying to make bring functions, bring processes in place which are suitable to that particular organization, to that particular use case, to that particular set of people. I mean, it's not just that we know designers are not designers, and the same thing with product management or engineering or any other functions. There are a lot of individuals having unique backgrounds, unique skills, and how do you take those skills and really help them shine on the basis of whatever they are good at, and help them also grow in their careers, eventually to get something impactful in the hands of customers. So after are a lot more lessons that I have to learn with how to lead a team and how to lead an organization. But I'm hoping that over the next few years, in addition to leading, I can start inspiring people to do something great with their careers, with the skills that they have. A small effort in that over the last few years has really been trying to do some coaching. There is a site called the Design Lab, which offers short design courses and as well as long ones. I've helped several designers, change their careers from content writers or engineers into designers. One of the designers that I helped started in Taiwan. She's now working in Canada with Buffer. It's a fully remote company. They have a lot of stress on design. Great company there. A bunch of other examples like that where of course it's a lot of their own hard work. I've tried to help a lot of people, but those who are really passionate about it do go ahead. And very recently, I've started working with OwnPath. It's also a company that's been recently set up to help designers with live one-on-one coaching. And that's I've worked with offering a course to one of the large e-commerce companies, helping their design managers, new managers, become more effective because their team has just blown up massively in the last and one design head just cannot take care of everything. So it's been an effort to help them out a little bit there, and we're hoping to do a lot more there. So yeah, that's with the introduction. I'm hoping that some form of socially distant cutting chai that we can have. I'm from Mumbai. Yeah. I remember I miss this. So
we love hoping cutting chai in
Mumbai. I know, right? So strange times, but that's where we are. So yeah, with that, Rupam, what I can answer any questions that you might have.
Right. No, I mean, I think that was a great insight into your entire journey, because it gives us a good perspective of how how we can grow over a period of time. And that sort of brings me to this question that, how does a designer who is just starting and a designer leader that is leading them, how does their two different role look like on daily basis?
Sure. So on a daily basis, like you said, there are these two very specific roles that we have: an individual contributor and a manager. Your work when you are an individual contributor is really around showing your expertise, around innovating, around coming with some great solution. It requires deep focus. It requires problem solving skills. There's a lot of execution. It's not just that you have a great idea, but you all know that it takes a lot of work to really execute on that design idea. There's a lot of sweat and a lot of sleepless nights and weekend work that people have to do to really get that idea out in the hands of customers. It's also a lot of the term itself is individual contributor, so there's a lot of self-reliance. You have to be organized. You have to be able to focus on one thing and get it done. For a manager, deep focus is no longer a luxury. It is constant context switching, as dozens of times a day, as on some days. There's a lot of communication, coordination. It takes a whole lot of strategic thinking, really connecting the dots, because you become suddenly aware of a lot of other things that are going on in the organization, which as a designer you may not be involved in. Around business strategies, around customer problems, around competition. There are a whole bunch of things that you suddenly become aware about, and it puts you in a position where you can make a lot of connections. Where, say, one of the teams that you're working with, and when I say teams, I'm referring to product teams. So, say for example, in Blue Jeans, I was my team was helping support 6 different teams across 3 different products. And each of these teams worked on their own. Yes, they would share once in a while what's going on, but really it was many times the design team found opportunities to use the capability built by one team to solve a problem that another team was facing. And you come across a lot of these kind of opportunities as well. So there's a lot of that strategic thinking, planning, and of course it becomes, because people management becomes a part of your role, building people's careers, like I said, motivating them. All the work that a designer does always is not the best work that they want to do, but it's all part of the work. You have to do it. Say for example, we all love coming up with a brand new concept and building on that, but there's also a lot of maintenance, especially in a product team, as against working in an agency. There's a lot of maintenance work that you do to keep your product in top shape, and there's a lot of small little fixes which, if you look back, you wouldn't know that you've actually done any work, but it's such important work to keep that going. And for the manager, it's up to keeping the team motivated to do that work, and also finding the right balance between giving you good meaty projects that motivate you versus having this kind of a work as well. So yeah, it's a lot of nudging. It's a lot of making sure people work in the same direction. So there's a huge kind of difference between the two.
Right. I mean, that does make sense. Like, as you and mature, I think a lot of things start changing for you as a designer, and sometimes you're lost as to how different things work differently. So, just coming to the next point in that case, that's how do you keep on defining this metric for different role or as a designer in that case?
Right. So when you talk about success, right? Like, how do you define success for a designer versus a design manager?
Right.
For a designer, the end user is the world, right? If my end user who's using the product is happy, if the product has been adopted, then I'm happy, right? I did the right work. I took the right decisions. I shipped the right kind of design. Of course, that is also a metric for the manager. But for them, really, another level of success is when the designer's career is also growing, and the designer is more capable quarter on quarter, month on month, in the areas that they want to be capable. So, for example, when I'm interviewing designers to hire them, one of the first within the first one or two conversations, one of the very important thing we discuss is that see, on this role, these are the things that I can offer you. These are the skills that you will use, and these are the skills that you will have to build to really be successful in this role. Now, does this align with your vision of your career growth? If you learned these things, would you say that you have grown in your career? And if these two align, then
Right.
that's the best kind of job to get. If they are not aligned, then you're not motivated doing the kind of work that is being given to you, right? So that is the thing. The another difference, I think, which happens, which makes it tricky to define success also, is that the designer has complex problem to solve, and they have tools and techniques to make that problem more understandable, using research and other methods. For a leader, living with ambiguity is the job, right? You can clarify it for your team, but for yourself, there is always some level of ambiguity, and it takes a while for you to really know whether you're going in the right direction or not. And you have to learn to live with that and see the signs, and the little sense the little changes to really see whether how you're doing.
So, how do you keep on measuring whether you're in right direction or not? If I have to just ask you, how do you maintain that?
Sure. So one of the things definitely is taking feedback. I think when we look at appraisals and one-on-one discussions, it almost always seems like the manager is having this one-on-one discussion to give feedback to the team member, but it's also the other way around. I mean, I almost often ask my team members, what can I do better? What can I do for you? How can I? Is there some way that I'm getting in your way? Is something else getting in your way? How can I solve that for you? And is there something that you want me to stop doing, right? So I learned like one lesson kind of the hard way 2 companies ago, where I was just used to doing things a certain way, explaining the requirements to my designers in a certain way. And we had another office in the US, and this designer was sent there for a project for about 3 to 4 weeks. And at the end of the first week, when I had my one-on-one with him, he said that, the culture here is very different. Everyone's on their own. There's no discussions. You just have a meeting, and you're expected to know what to do, and you're supposed to just do it. Versus when we are in Bangalore, we discuss everything, we talk everything through, we make a strategy, we figure out what we're going to do. And that led me to realizing that I was actually doing a disservice to this designer by literally spoon feeding him. And when they were on their own, he didn't know what to do, which was bad on my part. So I had to change that. I had to learn that and change that. And so now I'm very conscious of that particular thing, and I make it a point to ask and hold myself back as well, right? And now I know to look out for those signs that when a designer on my team is not asking me for guidance, working independently and still coming up with some great solutions, it means that they are independent. It means that I have not been spoon feeding them. And so that's what I said. It takes a lot of time, but you have to start watching out for certain signs.
And that actually sounds great and very interesting, because I think learning for as we grow as designers is also something which is very much necessary, and we should never stop that. And kind of brings me to my next question, which is how do you keep on learning continuously, to meet requirements or needs or innovation for future products and project learnings?
Sure. So, see, of course, as a designer, and even I went through my own journey. There were a lot of things that I learned along the way, and what I found that I've been lucky, and I mentioned this when I was talking about my time at Oracle, that we had all these facilities and also the additional part was that I was lucky enough to have great managers who gave me the space to learn, who gave me the space to fail. Right, that okay, you can try this out, you can try it this way, you can try it that way. They gave me the right perspective, but a lot of the learning really happens when you apply it, when you take that work and you do it without the fear that if something happens, if something goes wrong, then what's going to happen, right? So having that is is a luxury, and those who get it should really take most benefit out of it. And when you're looking for a job, you should definitely look out to make sure that you will get that kind of an environment. You may not get such things in writing, but usually during the interview there are a lot of verbal contracts that are made between a candidate and a manager. Every interview it happens, whether you look at that or not, and all those verbal contracts have to have things like this as well, right? Does the manager know that this is going to happen? The other thing that I mentioned was a break between a change of pace. So say you do a very intense deep dive focused project. After that, typically what I do, and again, this is not always possible, but as far as possible, I try to make it happen. Usually happens around 50% of the time, is to give members in my team some space to breathe, a slowdown in their pace, some gap. And many of them, because I've been many of them are self-motivated, or I've motivated them they look at new theories to develop a point, some point of view. So for example, one of the designers worked on an entire study on persuasion through emotion by building trust and such, and which is a very important thing in a business like ours. Scriptbox is into mutual funds, and investing is a long-term game, so you have to trust that your advisor is doing the right thing for you. So trust building is a very critical thing, and so she spent a fair amount of time creating the right pieces of knowledge for being able to persuade people and to build trust. And now it's a constant theme in all the work that she does. So that downtime is actually a learning time as well. And now she's more confident in the solutions that she comes up with. So this is all continuous learning, and to make space for that continuous learning and application of that is really one of the important things that I believe I do, right? Yeah, that's what that is.
Okay, I mean that actually makes sense, because as long as we have permission to fail, like Lean UX says, we can always continue to learn something new,
Yeah.
And on that point, I'm just going to drift a little bit from the flow of conversation we have been having to a different question. Is like earlier we discussed in the introduction what are the different career paths, there are that for a designer once they start evolving in an organization?
Right. So, see, there are different kinds of organizations. Some of them, especially the startups and smaller organizations, or they may not. They're still learning how to set up a design team and what should be the levels and such. And there are more mature organizations which have global teams. Usually the multinationals have this kind of a thing where there is a proper very well defined path to grow, right? And the levels are very clearly defined. Like I mentioned before, like back in the day I was given a choice between individual contributor and manager, and I chose individual contributor at the time. And then later in a different organization I chose from to individual contributor to manager. Traditionally, if we think about it, people believe that success will be linear, in that way that, okay, you're a junior designer, then a senior lead principal, then you become a manager, and etc. But that need not always be the case. It really depends, and you have to find out for yourself what you want to do and join that kind of organization. So it's again an important conversation to have when you're joining an organization, that what is the career path, right? How does it look? Say for example, if I did amazingly well every year, what are the levels that I get promoted into, and is there a ceiling to that, right? Typically in more mature organizations, you will find that you can have individual contributors who are very, very specialized. Even in terms of the kind of work they get the most cream of the work. They get the most challenging work to do, and they are paid as much or more than the managers who might be their peers. So all of those things are possible. They're already there. I think locally it will take some more time for companies to mature, but as teams are getting larger, they are getting more formalized. There is no doubt they have to do it. So I think for those who are students now, they will have a lot of opportunities going ahead to go as individual contributors or as managers. Both the things would be open to them. So again, it's up to you. The responsibilities, and we can you can always but one thing to be aware of is that even as a very senior individual contributor, you are still collaborating with people. You will still mentor others. You will still impart the knowledge that you have gained. So while you may not be responsible for people's career growth, there is a lot that you can contribute to it. So that would still be a important thread there.
Right. So just a follow up to that, when you grow as a designer, whether you are a principal designer or whether you're a design manager, there are a lot of expectation there from the people, and there are also expectations that your bosses have. So how do you think a senior designer balances that?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, managing stakeholder expectations, managing and for new managers, it's managing upwards, downwards, sideways, all over the place. There's a lot of that you have to do. I found that just some like a small thing that you can do is list down all the stakeholders that are there, and for each project, as the project starts, just define what each of them expect from you, and what each of them expect from your team. If you can, first thing is, do you even understand all of that? And if you don't, then your manager should be able to understand that. Once you understand that and you list it down, then you should be able to see that, okay, what are the expectations that I think I can easily fulfill, which are the ones that I will have to work harder at, and eventually which are the ones that I can't fulfill, right? And you have to bring that up to your manager and say, listen, like, this is what these people are expecting, but this is really something that I can't handle. As a manager, the job would be to then handle that, right? Clear that hurdle from that person's to-do list.
I think that's a great point. I think keeping things realistic and keeping proper communication at the senior role, I think, plays a very big role in overall, I think, the whole product cycle, service cycle, whatever you call it. And I think that's a great insight. So I'll just have one more closing question with you. We had a chat earlier that you were also working to help some NGOs and organizations set up some disaster management plan for COVID-19 and all. So can you throw some light, like how we can design for those situation or any other disaster situation?
Sure, absolutely. So just to give the background on that, so there is group that has gotten together called the COVID Action Collab, and it's a group of huge number of people and many organizations, design teams, content folks, and of course NGOs that have come together to help out the authorities with and of course people on the ground to manage this extremely critical situation that we are in. What they're doing, one is setting up kind of a call center where people can call and describe their condition, and they will be guided to the correct thing to do, along with follow-up calls that they will receive every couple of days to check whether their symptoms are improving or getting worse, and whether they have those specific systems for symptoms for COVID or not. And then they are creating a whole lot of material which can be sent on social media. There are also applications that are being created to calculate how much it would cost to get necessities for helping out people whose employment has been lost. If someone has to donate, say you come and say you want to donate food for 20 families, how much should I ask you to donate? And it's a calculator to help there. So there are a lot of small things like this that are being done, but there is no formal team for this. There is no process for this. It's just a bunch of people who are willing to do their best. Now, with all that creativity, you can, if everyone's running in different directions, you may not get something useful. So even with all their willingness, it requires somebody to organize them and to point them in the correct direction. That's kind of, and I'm not the only one who's doing this. Of course, there are a whole bunch of other people who are involved in this, and we have never met each other. We just know each other on Slack. It's an interesting constraint, which is leading to a certain level of innovation. Our normal assumptions have been challenged. We don't know how is the right way to do this, and it's requiring everyone's creativity to do this. So there's definitely there are in all over the world. I mean, there are teams that are like this that have got together and have created various ways for donors to find people in need, people in need to find donors, help for doctors, help for people on the ground, and such like that. So again, same thing with this. My contribution really is coming to helping them strategize how to fulfill these needs, working with just trying to organize and mobilize everybody, all of the volunteers, to do the right work in the same kind of direction. So yeah, that's my kind of little contribution there. Yeah. So. Hey, Rupam, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute. Apologies.
Yeah, I figured.
So just to move on to the next section of a talk, Raghavi will be taking over for the Q&A from the audience. So over to you, Raghavi.
Thank you, Rupam. Hello, Samir. That was quite an insightful discussion.
Thank you.
So over to the audience's questions. So the first question is like, giving constructive feedback is the core of mentoring in a design manager role. How do you give feedback on a daily basis?
Sure. So I try to first give context. I think that is really the most important thing. Like I said, as a manager, you come to know a whole bunch of things that are happening in the organization. And the hope is that if I can give the right context and I have the right skills and motivation within my team, really, I don't have to tell the designer what to do and how to do it. They should be able to, do that themselves. But giving feedback both on design and on their performance, both are very, critical things, like you said. What I do, how I go about it, is really keep a structure in place, which helps me make sure that I'm asking the right kind of questions. It's really more than feedback. It's more making them think in the right direction. So instead of giving answers, my approach really is to ask questions. And usually, smart people are able to figure out where, whether they are going in the right direction or not, and what corrective action they need to take.
Thank you so much. The next question is from Karthik Goel. He says that he is a first year design student at IDC. He wanted to ask how do he approach how will he approach working towards making a career in UX design? Is there anything that he can do with all this time to build it?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of problems to solve around us. Right now, we have, like I said, unique constraint situations, which are bringing new problems that we have not faced before. And I think, definitely, me as a hiring manager, what I look at when I'm trying to, hire someone is, look at these skills. How are they able to understand the context around them? How critically can they think? Do they see scope for improvement in the things around them? And what is their attitude towards improving those things? There's a lot of things that you could do right now in terms of building your solutions, building some solution, writing about it, and creating something. The other thing is also really understand, in terms of building a career. I mean, look at what companies are looking for. Does that align with what you are looking for? I think having that awareness is important, and it's very hard to get that awareness until you work for a couple of years. So if you can just start looking for the signs, you may not get the answers yet, but in a few years you will. If you keep asking that question, then you will keep getting those answers. So yeah, that's what I would recommend him to do.
Thank you. And the third question is about innovation during COVID-19. So can we ask Malay to ask this question? Maybe he can give a good brief description of this question.
Sure.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question is about, so there are so many artifacts that are created, design artifacts that are created during during this situation.
Yeah.
There are visualizations, there are models, there are DIY ventilators, there are lots of different DIY PPEs which are made at home and supplied probably to some hospitals.
Yeah.
So and there are games as well. There are behavioral interventions like games, there are graphics and so forth. So my question was, and most of, apart from PPEs, I think other artifacts like visualizations, games, and so forth, they belong to this category which I call as solutionism, where they directly attack the problem through a very surgical, clinical design mindset.
Yeah.
What are some? So my question is about how does one decide criticality of design artifacts in these times?
Right. So I mean, see, like you said, right, this is a critical time. There are, it is a time, I would say, right now for solutionism, because everything else takes time, and which we don't have, right? Countries who have taken quick action, swift action, are in a better position than those who delayed action even by a few days or a week. And people's lives are at stake, so anything that can be done, going to help them in the right direction, to help them be safe, these are all things that are the need of the hour. But I think you identified a very important aspect of it, is that when we are over this, will we go back to normal, or will we change our behavior? And there is definitely a need to do something which will change us and our behaviors for the better, for the future. And those would be more longer term solutions, which may take longer to develop and longer to implement, and they will last longer as well. So that's kind of what I think about that. Is that, Malay, is that what you were pointing towards?
Well, sort of, but my major question was about how does one decide what should we make and what should we not make during these times?
Okay.
Because there are at least 16 different visualizations that are related to India, made by different companies that I know of.
Yeah.
There are at least 4 or 5 games that are out there.
Yeah.
How does one decide that is game a good solution for these times or not, or something like that?
I think there are lessons from other areas. There have been other smaller epidemics in other countries. There has been a lot of material. In fact, this collaborative that I'm working with has taken inspiration from tuberculosis work done in the past, from HIV work done in the past. And we should be able to find examples like that and say that, okay, did this work, did this not work, what is useful, what is not useful. Just because I know how to make this doesn't mean it's going to be useful for somebody. That said, I don't think there could be an abundance of help, right? There is always a shortage of help. So and different things appeal to different people, like even in terms of behavioral nudges or games and such that you do. There is no wide distribution mechanism that can take something to everybody, right? Unless it's like an Arogya Setu app, which the Prime Minister comes on TV and tells everybody to install. There are very few other channels that we have which will take a game that you or me might have made to take it to everyone, and who's to say that it will work for everyone. So there are so many different things. I think if you wanted to find what to do, whatever your local community needs. So one of the example that with this collaborative that we found, that the NGO found, was affecting the community that they worked with. They found garment factory workers, primarily ladies who work in garment factories, and they found domestic help. These were two set of people who are affected in a way that they found a certain stigma around this, and we have seen this in the news, doctors being attacked and such like that. All these things are coming from a feeling of stigma, that if I'm found positive for something, or if I'm quarantined, what's going to happen? I don't want to go there. I don't want to face that. And different communities, based on their level of exposure to the world, based on their socio-economic status, they may receive different information differently. They have to be able to relate to it in a certain way that is relatable to them from their life experience. And so there is no shortage of things that you can build for different sets of people. Like when we do product marketing, we segment people. There are different kinds of people and different things work for them. Beyond the obvious physical things, these behavioral things, there's a wide variety that you could go with.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Samir, and thanks, Malay.